Okay, let's unpack this. We're doing a deep dive today into a story that is just incredibly personal and honestly pretty surprising. What stack of sources brought us?
We are charting the trajectory of a singular career, a career that for, I'd say, the last decade felt like a puzzle nobody could solve. The public watched for years what really looked like a slow-motion career collapse.
Yeah, collapse is the right word.
You'd see these performances that felt, repetitive. There was this visible loss of energy. And as one source put it, and this is just chilling, the light behind his eyes seemed to dim.
That phrase, the light behind his eyes seemed to dim, is so profoundly sad. It encapsulates the entire mood, doesn't it? Fans were seeing truly uncharacteristic behavior from Bruce Willis.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this was the beloved, self-made Hollywood leading man, and suddenly he's just taking these low-impact roles, churning out films one after the other, and the questions just kept multiplying.
And the rumors started.
Right. Why were lines reportedly being fed to him through an earpiece? An earwig, as they call it in the industry. And then you have the most concerning reports from the set, where sometimes he didn't even know why he was there at all.
Exactly. The whole mystery was fueled by these confusing, almost ghost-like appearances. We found sources where nearly 24 different people who worked with him voiced these mounting concerns over several years.
So in that vacuum of information, the most cynical explanation felt like the most logical one.
Yeah.
Exploitation.
That was the core conflict, the idea that someone, somewhere, was taking advantage of a famous name for a quick, cynical buck.
Our sources are really clear on that. The public thought they were witnessing cynicism, maybe greed, or maybe just an actor who had completely lost his passion for the craft. But as we dig into the full story, the reality was, it's just far more tragic.
So much more tragic. We weren't witnessing a decline fueled by apathy or some desperate need for money. We were watching the very early stages of a devastating, relentlessly progressive illness.
An illness that was robbing him of his ability to perform and, ultimately robbing him of his very self.
It's the story of a man who worked against all the odds to become a superstar, who built a life centered on his family and these incredibly grounded principles. And right at the moment when public perception turned to scorn, he was fighting a profound, silent, and deeply personal battle.
So to really understand the magnitude of this final heartbreaking act, we have to go back. We have to appreciate how Bruce Willis became the icon we remember.
Let's jump right in. Part 1, the making of a superstar.
And this is so important because it's the bedrock of the whole narrative. It highlights his sheer determination. Bruce Willis is one of those rare examples of a truly self-made leading man in the late 20th century.
Totally. He had zero industry connections, no wealthy parents to, smooth the way for him. This career was forged purely through hard work, grit, and this almost singular passion for cinema.
His origins were about as humble as you can get for a future action star, right?
Oh, absolutely. Our sources detailed the grind where he spent, roughly a decade just trying to get a foot in the door. He was a jobbing actor, taking years and years of roles as an extra or a minor character.
You're talking blink and you'll miss it appearances.
Barely there. In serious dramas like the 1982 Paul Newman film The Verdict, and then eventually small parts on huge TV shows like the iconic Miami Vice, he was just relentlessly pursuing any angle he could find.
And he was trying to branch out, too. Because the acting alone wasn't paying the bills or, getting him noticed enough.
Precisely. He was actively dabbling in music, trying to find another creative outlet that might just hit. He even released a song in a music video back in 1986 called Respect Yourself.
I remember that.
It was his attempt to carve out a public persona. But none of those minor appearances or the musical career, none of it was enough to catch the attention of the major producers or casting directors. He was just another struggling New York actor grinding away.
The real undeniable pivot, though, came with the television show Moonlighting. That started in 1985. This wasn't just a role. This was the moment America really started to see the depth of Bruce Willis's persona.
He played David Addison, this sarcastic, super quick-witted detective running a private, and he was opposite Sybil Shepherd, who played Maddie Hayes, the ex-model love interest.
The genius of that show was how it broke the fourth wall, the rapid-fire banter, and of course that undeniable sexual tension between the two leads.
And that's where his charisma was truly discovered. America found out he wasn't just some extra. He was funny, charming, quick on his feet, and he had this explosive charisma both on and off the set.
There's a great anecdote about his first impression on Sybil Shepherd that really captures how suddenly his talent was recognized.
Oh, yeah. She talks about watching him during the screen tests, and she noted his, let's say, unconventional approach to act. She said he was playing scenes not necessarily to her, but sometimes to the camera operator, claiming his eyes were giving him trouble.
A little rough around the edge.
Very. But despite any of that, Her genuine, immediate first impression was just straightforward and physical. She leaned over to the show's creator, Glenn Gordon Caron, and just whispered, "He's cute."
And that's it. A simple observation, but it signaled that he possessed that intangible star quality. He had it.
That's the moment of recognition. This raw, authentic charm was then immediately validated when he won the People's Choice Award for Favorite Male in a new TV program. The audience just loved the banter and the rough edges he brought to David Addison.
But his TV popularity really just served as a launchpad, didn't it?
Oh, completely. Everything truly changed in 1988 with the release of Die Hard. This wasn't just a career boost. This was a total redefinition of the action genre and his place within it.
He was hired to play John McClane, a New York City cop visiting his estranged wife, Holly, in Los Angeles. Her high-rise office party gets taken over by Hans Gruber, played, of course, by the brilliant Alan Rickman.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because Die Hard completely broke the mold. You have to remember the context of 1988. Action stars were these massive, oiled-up demigods.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, they were invincible.
And John McClane was the complete opposite. He was a New York City cop, grumpy, vulnerable, often screaming in pain, bleeding, constantly out of his depth. The film's central conflict, a cop forced to save his wife and her coworkers, wasn't just an action plot.
No, it was about him realizing what was truly important in his personal life, his family.
It instantly launched Willis into a new kind of total badass action star status, the relatable badass.
The sources also highlight his surprising humility amidst all that chaos of becoming an icon. Even though he had this immediate reputation, Willis admitted his genuine fear of doing the intense stunt. This wasn't bravado, he was just honest.
He famously said that if he had been shown the stunt first, particularly that roof jump, he likely wouldn't have done it. He said he would have been too scared. He wasn't afraid of looking weak, he was just, afraid of the stunt itself.
And he did the stunt, of course.
Of course. And when he saw it on film, he thought it was spectacular, amazing, but he was very clear. No, I wouldn't do that one. That genuine fear and his refusal to pretend he was some inhuman action machine made him so much more relatable to the audience.
He was a grounded cop, an extraordinary and very painful search.
That relatability was absolutely key to the film's lasting impact and its artistic merit. Our sources point out that if you rewatch Die Hard today, it's a masterclass in economy. It accomplishes more in 2 hours than many modern action movies manage in 3.
And Willis had this unique talent, right? The ability to convey deep emotion with really minor gestures.
Extremely minor gestures. A small smirk, a shift in his stance, a slight roll of the eye. He never needed to overact to get his point across.
And the commercial success just validated all of it. Die Hard had a budget of $28 million, which was substantial for the time, but it made about $140 million at the worldwide box office. This wasn't just a hit. It was the foundation of a new franchise and a cemented status for Bruce Willis.
And this period wasn't just about his professional life exploding. This was a huge year for him personally. He and his first wife, Demi Moore, had their first child, Rumor.
Right. And this transition into fatherhood, happening right at the peak of his early fame, is so crucial for understanding the man he became and the priorities he upheld until the very end. He found this massive fame, but what did he prioritize?
He was excited, but also incredibly honest about the crushing anxiety of trying to be the father of every child.
He spoke publicly about this vulnerability so rare for an action star of that era, saying he kept thinking that nothing can prepare you for that. He openly admitted to fears about not being up to the task.
He acknowledged that parents make mistakes and that nobody can do it perfectly, but he was striving for that perfection anyway.
That level of honesty, while sitting on the edge of global superstardom, is what truly endeared him to fans. Even as his fame exploded, fans loved that he always kept a cool head. He never let the industry consume.
And he credited his rapidly growing family for keeping him so grounded. When he was interviewed alongside other action legends about what kept him going, he basically admitted he'd rather be at home with his kids.
He made that famous, blunt statement, didn't he?
He did. He said, "My children are a lot more interesting to me than just about anybody else that I know on the planet." That's a powerful philosophical statement from a man who could have easily chased every meaningless trophy Hollywood had to offer.
That sets the stage perfectly for part 2, the golden era and a grounded life. This is his absolute peak in the 1990s. With all this momentum and this grounding philosophy, he was now playing a much bigger game.
A much bigger game, demanding higher pay. Delivered. It generated a full $100 million more than the first film at the worldwide box office.
So that officially leveled him up to superstar status. He could command major roles, huge budgets.
But the true mark of his golden era wasn't just the action skills. It was the proof of his depth and his willingness to take real artistic. He used his newfound clout to show the world that he was a serious performer, not quipping cop.
And sometimes he just embraced the silly, unserious roles for the fun of it.
And the paycheck stability. He was everywhere, embracing diversity across the entire decade. Our sources highlight his commitment to proving his range. He played a veteran fighting the emotional scars of PTSD in the dramatic war film.
And he famously voice acted as the inner monologue of a baby in the surprise comedy hit Look Who's Talking.
And then he took on a major, serious dramatic role, playing writer Peter Fallow in Bonfire of the Vand alongside Tom, a film that, while it was criticized, showed his commitment to drama.
And all of this artistic experimentation was happening while he was still participating in the third, and some would argue, the most commercially successful edition of the franchise, Die Hard with a Vengeance.
That one secured a massive $366 million at the worldwide box office, which at the time was an almost unthinkable sum.
The 1990s really were his golden era of credibility and commercial appeal. He wasn't seen as a one-trick pony. He was an established leading man, making strides across sci-fi, drama, comedy.
He was fully comfortable exploring new roles while still giving the fans the action hero.
And he continued to immortalize himself with other great definitive characters. Butch Coolidge, the boxer in Quentin Tarantino's genre-defining Pulp Fiction.
Corbin Dallas in Luc Besson's visually spectacular The Fifth Element.
And Harry Stamper, the rugged oil driller sent to save the planet in Michael Bay's blockbuster Armageddon.
We have to pause on Pulp Fiction. That was such a critical. Playing Butch Coolidge, a boxer who refuses to throw a fight, allowed Willis to show this dramatic gravitas and intense completely outside the John McClane universe.
It solidified his status as an actor willing to work with visionary directors on genre-bending projects, not just studio tentpoles.
Exactly. These roles collectively cemented his, making him number 21 on the list of highest-grossing leading men at the box office.
And yet, through all of it, he remained so humble, which is remarkable given the exponential success he achieved. He refused to be labeled a superstar.
He was quoted as saying he was still learning how to act and that he learned something new about the craft from every single film. This wasn't false modesty. It was a real commitment to grow.
But why the relentless search for diverse roles? Did he feel trapped by the action genre?
His reasoning was beautifully pragmatic. He said it would be very boring for him to do actions all the time, and he flatly admitted he was tired of it.
Yeah.
He sought out things to challenge himself with.
He specifically said he liked to do films where he wasn't quite sure if he was going to succeed.
Yeah. He embraced the risk of failure as part of the learning process.
That drive for a genuine challenge, rather than chasing easy success, leads to this interesting theory from some Hollywood observers. Why wasn't he higher? Why wasn't he a perennial top 5 guy like Tom Cruise or a top 10 guy like Stallone?
The theory suggests that Bruce was just a bit too real for Hollywood's up. That grounded persona might have cost him some meaningless trophies, as the source material puts it, but it kept him rooted in reality.
He didn't overwork himself or neglect his family just to chase awards presented by people he barely respected.
No, he was just a solid New Jersey guy you'd actually want to chat with.
And nothing highlights that approachable persona more than the anecdote about the bad snack. When asked about his most frustrating day on set, you'd expect a story about a difficult director or a complicated stunt.
But instead, he immediately cut to the chase and went on this incredible, detailed rant about food quality.
The frustration wasn't about professional drama. It was about the simple, real-world disappointment of terrible baked goods.
He complained bitterly that in London they have horrible donuts. He went into minute detail, comparing them unfavorably to the great, freshly baked, quality donuts you get in Dallas with the superior cream fill.
Specificity is amazing. And then he pivoted to scones.
He said they were like earth or something, with mud and a few rays, insisting that a scone is absolutely not a donut. This detail is so crucial because it shows that despite his astronomical fame, the things that grounded him were simple, real-world annoyances.
He was anchored to tangible reality, not the illusion of Hollywood.
That humbleness, that commitment to reality might have prevented him from ever being a manufactured top 5 guy, but it also ensured he didn't lose himself in the industry.
He certainly hadn't lost his touch, though.
Right.
Just when his career would seemingly settle into a pattern, he'd pick it up again in an incredibly unique way. That leads directly to his second wind, right before the storm began.
With the 1999 film The Sixth Sense, he played child psychologist Malcolm Crowe, delivering this incredibly subtle performance that produced one of the greatest twists in the history of 90s thriller. It just secured his reputation as an actor of deep emotional caliber.
And the success of that film wasn't just commercial, it was personal. His young co-star, Haley Joel Osment, who was working on his first major role, spoke so warmly of Willis's mentorship.
Osment recognized Willis' inherent goodness and saying he was destined to become larger than life because heart.
Now, his personal life wasn't without complication. In October 2000, he and Demi Moore announced their separation. But even in divorce, Willis demonstrated that grounded philosophy he had championed since becoming a father.
They had 3 daughters, and they were determined to work together for the best interest of the kid. Willis was fiercely determined to rise above the resentment and anger that often come forth.
He emphasized that if you can truly make your children the most important thing, you have a shot at evolving into something positive your kids can observe and participate in.
That amicable split was so genuine that he even chose to attend Demi Moore's wedding years later to Ashton Kutcher. That level of maturity and commitment to family just set him apart from the typical Hollywood.
And around this time, Bruce Willis entered a noticeably different phase of his career. This is what we're calling part 3, the recalibration and the public puzzle. It wasn't a sudden fall from grace. It was a deliberate philosophical shift.
Yeah, post-2000, he was no longer chasing critical validation or box office dominance. He was focused on collecting paychecks, enjoying life, and working on his own terms. The pressure was off.
We see examples of this shift in choices that might have baffled critics. I'm thinking of him turning down the main role in Ocean's 11.
Right. He said he didn't want the intense, months-long commitment of a lead role in a major ensemble picture, but then he gladly did a one-day cameo in the sequel, Ocean's 12.
He still took on iconic roles, showing the fire hadn't gone out entirely. His priorities had just shifted.
Precisely. He was John Hartigan in Sin City, a visually stunning, artistically ambitious graphic novel adaptation. He provided the voice of RJ in the kid-friendly film Over the Hedge, and he delivered a successful sequel, Live Free or Die Hard.
He was now approaching 50. And you could tell this was a guy who achieved legendary status, secured his financial future, and was just having fun. And more importantly, his 3 daughters were teenagers.
He was focused intensely on being a role model and a guide. He used his fame as a teaching, warning them about the corrosive dangers of Hollywood.
What specifically was the downside in his view? It wasn't just the long hours or the tough reviews, was it?
No, it was much deeper. It was the relentless, invasive press, the manufactured culture of fame, the fanaticism of fans, and most importantly, the illusion of what people think your life is compared to what your life really is.
He believed his daughters had a critical grip on reality because they saw the messy, imperfect truth of his life every single.
And his definition of love remained the cornerstone.
It was so simple yet so profound.
It's when you can put someone else's welfare ahead of. He used his interaction with his kids as the ultimate metric, saying, "This is love. I know what it is. I got it." He even joked about being in the delivery room, pulling the babies out, laughing, crying, a raw, hands-on detail that just underscores.
In 2009, he got married to actress and model Emma Hemming, and he was confident he could continue to balance his professional and personal life well into his later years. He was resolute about not retiring.
He stated clearly that he never planned on giving it up, expressing his plan to be working until he was just a bag of bones rolling around, and that he would fire one last bullet, and that would be the end.
However, as he became an official Hollywood veteran, the public started to notice a significant and frankly baffling decline. He was taking on roles that seemed beneath him, simpler, less impactful. His appearances got briefer, his lines were limited.
And a large portion of his audience started to turn against him, feeling somehow cheated or betrayed by the lack of effort.
This feeling just got worse throughout the 2010s because fans had no idea what was actually going on behind the scenes. They saw him in ensemble films like The Expendables and had these complex reactions.
Was it a blatant cash grab, or was it a nostalgic nod to action fans? The performances seemed to suggest the former.
He'd gone through similar cycles, though, taking on smaller roles, then coming back to prove he hadn't lost his touch. For a moment in 2012, it looked like we were going to see another one of those periods.
He took on Captain Sharp in Wes Anderson's whimsical Moonrise Kingdom and played the older version of Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character in the acclaimed sci-fi film Looper. He was establishing himself as this seasoned, versatile professional.
But the truth is, the mainstream public started being brutal towards him in the mid to late 2010. You couldn't help but notice his performances were considerably low energy, even for someone getting older.
He took a noticeable backseat in the latest Die Hard sequel, and some of the magic that made his movies so watchable just seemed to be gone.
And that detachment was put on full, uncomfortable public display during an interview promoting a film where he totally dismissed the process as mere sales.
I remember that. He was asked about his favorite place to film, and he dismissed the question about that specific movie, saying he liked Istanbul in general, before stating clearly, "This part is not acting. We're just selling the film now. That fun part was making the movie."
Watching that interview back now is haunting. Instead of those subtle gestures that used to convey depth, his face was often expressed tact. Critics couldn't tell if he even wanted to be there.
Or if he was just along for an easy paycheck, sacrificing his hard-earned reputation in the process.
To compound the confusion, his face would be slapped on the cover of countless straight-to-video movies, only for his screen time to be so short that people felt actively scammed. But this, as the sources reveal, was all by design.
Which brings us to part 4. the exploitation factory. This was the prevailing fan theory at the time, and we really need to understand this.
Okay, so explain the Geyser teasers and the producer, Randall Emmett, who engineered this highly specific business niche. What made this operation so successful?
Randall Emmett and his company basically mastered the micro-budget action model. They focused on what the industry calls geyser, a constant geyser-like stream of new, cheap film.
And the business model was pure efficiency.
Pure efficient. They would offer vast sums of money, sometimes several $1,000,000, to aging stars for only a day or two of work. The entire system was based on leveraging that star's name to pre-sell the movie in foreign market, covering the budget before filming even wrapped.
So the quality didn't matter at all, just the recognizable face on the poster.
These films were often dismissed as paint-by-numbers acts because the scripts were modular and the performances were minimal. But the model was ruthlessly effective. Emmett's company reportedly grossed over $1 billion.
They featured other high-profile names, not just Willis.
Oh yeah, people like Robert De Niro, Steven Seagal, but most frequently in the late 2010s, it was Bruce Willis.
The evidence of his disengagement, seen through the public lens, was just staggering. Distributors would use his image on the cover, run him early in the trailer, so you think, great, this is a Bruce.
But his actual screen time was shockingly brief. In films like Hard Kill, he reportedly had only 7 minutes of screen. He was more like a tertiary character who just showed up to deliver exposition.
By 2020, fans stopped being forgiving. His films were clocking in at truly abysmal ratings, often like 2.5 on IMDb.
The easy conclusion was he stopped caring, he's doing it for the money. But why make 8 direct-to-video movies in 1 year? That suggests a frantic need for activity.
So the exploitation theory, championed by online outlets, took hold. It was a deliberate exploitation factory, taking advantage of his star status for quick cash before his name lost all value.
But that theory shifts dramatically when you look at the confirmed onset concerns from industry insight. The disengagement wasn't just poor acting, it was a physical and cognitive necessity.
The rumor that became industry lore, that an actor traveled with Willis specifically to feed him his lines through an earpiece, the earwig, that was confirmed.
Confirmed by several crew members and directors who worked. And this wasn't a technique used to enhance performance, it was used because he could no longer memorize simple dialogue.
And the physical staging of his scenes reflected his lack of mobility.
Insiders noticed he wasn't really doing much in any of the film. He was frequently seen sitting down, expressionless, often reading something or looking detached.
During action scenes, body doubles were used for even basic movement.
And in some cases, crew members revealed he was often tied to a chair during action sequences, so he didn't even have to worry about shifting his body or losing his balance.
At the time, this was just seen as lazy film, but people on set were concerned something much deeper was wrong, that this wasn't just poor acting, it was a safety.
And we have that terrifying example from the filming of Hard. Willis allegedly fired a gun loaded with blanks on the wrong cue. While no one was injured, it deeply traumatized some crew members.
That kind of severe misjudgment and inability to follow basic safety protocols is a massive red flag that something fundamental is failing.
The sources show the depth of the industry concern. Nearly 24 people voiced their worry. Director Mike Burns came out saying he wasn't fully aware of Willis's decline until June of 2020, after the first day of work.
He saw it firsthand and realized why the script had to be constantly edited down, why he was being asked to shorten lines to just simple declarative statements.
And Burns noted the decline was accelerating. When he was asked to film another movie with Willis, Wrong Place, he checked in with Willis's team asking, "How's Bruce?"
And he was allegedly told.
He was allegedly told by the team that Willis was a whole different person, way better than. Burns felt this was a deliberate lie, and that based on his own observations, Willis was actually far worse. It led Burns to refuse to work with.
Director Jesse V. Johnson, who hadn't seen Bruce in decades, was shocked by how severe the cognitive decline really was.
He noted that Willis was happy to be there. He was still good-natured, but they had to finish shooting all of his scenes by lunch because his capacity was so limited. Johnson described it as clear that he was not the Bruce I remembered.
The crew's focus shifted entirely, didn't it? It became a mission in damage control, not filmmaking.
Completely. When Johnson finally got some alone time with Bruce on set, the tragic truth was Willis wasn't just fumbling lines, he didn't know why he was there.
And he uttered that heartbreaking quote,
"I know why you're here, and I know why you're here, but why am I here?"
That is the line that just stops you cold. It's not a complaint. It's a genuine question from a man lost in his own reality. The crew's priority wasn't getting a good performance anymore.
No, it was figuring out, how do we not make Bruce look bad? He was effectively being puppeted, given a line through an earpiece that he didn't understand, placed in a scene he couldn't contextualize.
And this is the crucial narrative shift. While critics and fans were theorizing about exploitation, they had horribly missed the mark. Willis didn't have control over any of it. He was already fighting a profound, silent battle for his life.
Which brings us to part 5, the tragic truth, the diagnosis, where the public context shifted dramatically from cynicism to Just profound.
On March 30, 2022, his wife, Emma Hemming, posted that devastating announcement on Instagram.
Confirming his retirement. She explained that he had recently been diagnosed with aphasia, which was already significantly impact cognitive abilities and his ability.
We need to go into depth on aphasia, especially how it manifests in someone whose entire career depends on communication.
Aphasia is a really complex communication disorder. It's caused by damage to the parts of the brain that control language, which could be from a stroke, a brain injury, or, as in Bruce's case, an underlying progressive neurological.
And it affects a person's ability to use language in multiple ways.
Multiple ways. Significant challenges in talking, understanding what others are saying, reading, writing, even using numbers.
For an actor, the impact is just catastrophic. We're not just talking about missing a line. We're talking about the loss of the entire cognitive toolkit required for the job.
Exactly. Memorization, rapid recall, emotional improvisation, understanding the subtext scene. Once this diagnosis became public, everything that had seemed like cynical detachment suddenly made painful, logical sense.
He wasn't stepping back from serious acting because he was bored or rich. He was physically and cognitively losing the ability to work on those high-stakes projects.
And retrospectively, you can see those early, subtle signs. Our sources point to a 2019 interview where he was already struggling with abstract thought, tailed red.
He gave very simple, repetitive praise for a co-star.
Just things like, I've done a lot of movies with Sam, always love working with him, and describing a film's ending is just really cool, really cool. The specificity, the depth of analysis he was once famous for was already diminished.
But aphasia was only the initial chapter of this tragedy. Less than a year later, in early 2023, his wife, Emma Hemming, revealed the diagnosis had been updated and refined. It was frontotemporal dementia, or FTD.
This transition from aphasia to the full diagnosis of FTD is critical because it explained the behavioral components that aphasia alone did not fully cover. FTD is a devastating condition, often described as hell on earth, because it attacks the very essence of a person's personality.
Let's discuss the medical context. Dr. Allison Reese, an internal medicine physician who researches these conditions, helps contextualize. What specifically is FTD doing to the brain?
FTD causes brain cells to die in specific crucial areas of the brain that govern our identity and function. The areas affected are the frontal lobes, which sit right behind the forehead, and the temporal lobes, which are behind the ears.
And those areas are responsible for things like personality, judgment, executive function,
and language comprehension. The destruction of these cells causes two major categories of symptoms. First, behavioral variant F, which causes drastic personality, loss of inhibition, apathy, poor social judgment, and repetitive behavior.
And second, the language variant,
which includes the difficulty speaking and the profound inability to name common things, like a spoon or a fork, that we associate with aphasia.
That explained the detachment, the lack of expression, and the simple, low-effort performance. If the frontal lobe is shutting down, the actor is literally losing his ability to emote and engage.
Precise. The inability to express thoughts, understand irony, or even register what others are saying has a massive impact on a person's quality. And the prognosis for FTD, as the disease progresses, it results in the path of losing pretty much your whole self.
Unlike Alzheimer's, which often starts with memory loss, FTD often starts with those severe behavioral changes, the loss of the self.
Much earlier on. And Emma Hemming noted that the first signs she observed weren't about memory, they were in Bruce's personality. He started feeling removed, a little cold, the exact opposite of the warm, affectionate, goofy man she knew.
That drastic shift caused immediate fear and alarm in the family.
She admitted she was initially afraid and confused, not understanding what was happening. She even questioned how she could remain in a marriage that didn't feel like what they had shared because the person she loved seemed to be slipping away emotionally.
But shortly after, they went to the doctor and discovered the critical illness, which had no hope of a cure.
The emotional weight of that diagnosis must have been just unbearable. To finally have an answer, but one that offered no solution.
She described the experience so vividly, hearing the diagnosis, which she initially couldn't even pronounce, and then feeling like she was in a free fall.
She said it was like leaving the doctor's office and realizing she had nothing to hold on to. No roadmap, no hope of recovery. It was the end of hope and the beginning of a tragic new reality.
That takes us into part 6, caregiving, family, and legacy. This is truly the final heroic act of his story, and it's carried out entirely by his blended family.
Let's first address the idea of him continuing to work. It's important to clarify that Willis's legal team confirmed he was not forced to work for financial. He insisted on continuing until it was absolutely impossible.
Which aligns perfectly with his earlier stated desire to act until he was a bag of bones.
He honored that philosophical commitment to continuous activity as long as his body and mind allowed, even as they failed.
But once the FTD progressed, the necessity for structured, intense care meant Emma Hemming had to make some incredibly hard, deeply painful decisions focused entirely on protecting Bruce and their young daughter.
She had to limit visitations, stop daughter sleepovers in the same home, and set up an environment where Bruce wouldn't inadvertently harm himself or others. She had to create safety.
And this is where the public criticism, still viewing the situation through a shallow Hollywood lens, became profoundly cruel. The family was attacked online after Emma revealed their decision to place him in a separate, dedicated second home with professional, round-the-clock care.
Emma's defense of this was necessary, and it served as a major moment of advocacy. She called it the safest and best decision, not just for Bruce, whose needs were absolute, but also for their two young girls who needed stability and protection from the disease's most destructive.
This criticism, as our sources point out, completely ignores the devastating reality of caring for someone with a degenerative brain disease like FTD.
You have to understand the reality of dementia to understand why professional care was not abandoned. Dementia is ruthless, and FTD in particular causes extremely dangerous and complex fears.
Violent, sudden outbursts rooted in confusion or frustration.
Sudden paranoia, where the person may accuse a loved one of theft or abuse. Serious household risk, doors left open, burners left on the stove, or the person wandering off.
And eventually, the heartbreaking moment where the person you love no longer recognized.
If the frontal lobe is compromised, the capacity for judgment, zero. Placing him in a second home with full-time professional care was not abandonment, it was protection. It was medically and psychologically.
And Emma Hemming has truly transformed her role into one of powerful advocacy and, critically, self-preservation.
She uses her platform to spread awareness, sharing a shocking statistic that came directly from Bruce's neurologist.
What was that statistic, and how did it impact her approach?
The neurologist told her that 30% of caregivers, spouses, children, the primary providers for FTD patients, die before their loved ones.
Wow.
That statistic was a big wake-up call for Emma to prioritize her own health. She realized that trying to do everything herself was unsustainable and dangerous. She acknowledged that this wasn't selfish, it was self-preserving in order to sustain the caregiving journey for Bruce and their daughters.
She recognized that Bruce, the man who defined love as putting someone else's welfare ahead of yours, would want her to do this.
Exactly. He would not want her to neglect her own health or jeopardize her ability to parent their children.
The current setup reflects this necessary separation and protection while still maintaining proximity.
Bruce lives in a separate house, but it's within walking distance of their home. This allows for necessary emotional and physical separation so that when the family does see him, the visits are characterized by overwhelming unconditional love and affection, free from the intense, constant burden of high-level medical care.
The information we receive now is through these family postcards, loving photos and videos posted by his current wife, Emma, his ex-wife, Demi Moore, and his daughter, Rumer, showcases this unified, blended family approach.
Emma wants everyone to know that Bruce is still mobile and physically healthy, which is a significant. He is, however, seemingly not aware of his condition, which, in some ways, offers a small shield against the emotional torment of the family.
What's fascinating here is how his lifelong commitment to his family became the ultimate, definitive measure of his success, transcending his film legacy entirely.
If you look back at his entire career, he never treated his family like a side quest. He openly spoke about choosing home over Hollywood whenever he could. He measured success not by box office numbers, but by whether his kids felt loved and supported.
And this is how his story finds its completion. Bruce Willis may no longer be able to fully understand the intricate shape of his life. He may not remember his roles, his accolades.
But what matters most is when he sees his family, he can feel their presence, feel their love. In the most profound sense, Bruce Willis did not story. He anchored by the love he prioritized. Deco.
So what does this all mean? The performance we thought we were watching, boredom, cynicism, or greed, was actually the raw, tragic, final performance of a man losing his ability to communicate and understand the world.
He was still trying desperately to honor his commitment to work until he was physically and cognitively unso. The exploitation wasn't one of his celebrity status. It was the exploitation of the early, confusing, devastating symptoms of a relentless.
This raises an important question.
Source material suggests story will find love and not his act. We define a life not by professional acts, but by the love and special jest about how we should